Hello everyone, I am Brother Eds and welcome to another episode with me and my students. So, enjoy the video.
Good day, everyone! I am Mary Merfil E. Briones of Grade 10 St. Vincent. Today, I will share to you the different stories and teachings from the Bible which comprises different characters. There is a purpose for the wide variety of stories. Every Bible story has its purpose as would be expected of a book inspired by the great and purposeful Almighty God. The stories that I will be going to share to you are all about friendships. First is the story of Jonathan and David. The most famous stories about friendship in the Bible is the story of Jonathan and David. Jonathan was the son of Saul, who was the first king of Israel. Saul disobeyed God to the point that having the kingdom was taken away from him, and causes Jonathan not to be the king of Israel, and has chosen David to be the next king of Israel. David and Jonathan became friends even if Jonathan knew that he would never be a king because he entrusted God's decision. Saul tried to kill David, but unfortunately, Jonathan saved David until such time Jonathan learned that King Saul would not allow David to live. Jonathan confronted him concerning David, and Saul unfortunately turned his anger to Jonathan, which made the life of Jonathan end. David was heartbroken to learn of his friend's death. Next is the story of Ruth and Naomi. Naomi's son was Ruth's late husband. While they were connected by a marriage relationship, they were also dear friends. Ruth certainly insisted on making Naomi return in her home in Israel. Though Ruth had lost her husband to death, she did not want to lose her friend. They returned to Israel together, grieving deeply for their mutual loss. They were faithful to one another. One of Naomi's relatives fell in love with Ruth. Their marriage brought peace and joy to these two ladies. Next is the story of Peter and Jesus. Jesus had a strong bond and relationship with all the disciples. One of the men who was prominent during the life of Jesus and for many years after was the disciple named Peter. During Jesus' life, Peter was prominent more than often not because of his mistakes. Yet, Jesus forgave him over and over. Actually, Peter said that he would stand by Jesus' side until death. Jesus knew that Peter would deny him. All four of the Gospel record Peter's denial. But before the Lord returned to heaven, he went to Peter in John 21 and showed compassion and forgiveness to him. Though Peter had denied Jesus, Jesus knew that he would be a man who would boldly proclaim the saving grace of God to the world. And the last one is the story of Barnabas and Paul. Paul and Barnabas had an argument which separated them from working together. But before these two men spent many years together as friends and partners in ministry, after Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus, he went to Arabia for 3 years. When he returned to Jerusalem, Barnabas was willing to accept Paul as friend and student. It is obvious that Barnabas was the leader of the team, so Barnabas trained Paul to be the great evangelist that he ultimately became. Later in the book of Acts, Paul is seen as the leader of the team. When they first worked together, the Bible talks about Barnabas and Paul, but later they were known as Paul and Barnabas. At some point, the student became the leader of the group of ministers. The two men worked for many years together, assuming that they separated as many believe over the relationship with John Mark. Paul speaks with respect to Barnabas' decision. Early in their traveling ministry, John Mark went back home. But later, Paul said that the young man had become profitable for the ministry. Paul benefited from the stance that Barnabas took in choosing to train John Mark. Though they did not always agree, it appears that these two friends continued to have respect for each other and their decisions. All these inspiring stories has place in religious worship and spiritual instruction and many others. As I read all these stories from the Bible that possess all about friendship, I am merrily satisfied as well as inspired by how they deal within every situation and on how they conquer everything that challenges their friendship. As a student, I have learned a lot in all the stories that I have shared. Jonathan and David's story taught us that a friend could sacrifice himself for the love of a friend, while Ruth and Naomi's story shows us how they are faithful to one another. While Jesus and Peter's story taught us of forgiveness, and Barnabas and Paul shows how they lift up and help one another. Many of us was taught of all the Bible stories, whether for our education, for our growth, or to encourage us. There is always a reason God placed each story in the Bible. All the examples in this story refer to a real life, historically accurate that God has also recorded for our learning. That's all for my report. Thank you for watching!
If you like the video, give us a thumbs up, comment below, share, and subscribe. That would be all. Goodbye everyone. God bless you.